So this will be the second Percy Jackson book review, but this will be the fourth review in this series. If anyone wants to follow along with the series, there'll be a playlist somewhere in my channel or in the description of this video. So this book takes off a year from when the last book took place. Percy has gone through his 7th grade in high school, middle school, whatever it is. And just like before, he's going to school with Grover. This old ass bearded weird fuck, and he makes friends with some homeless guy named Tyson. So this guy's arsenal of friends just keeps getting better and better. Homeless guy named Tyson, bearded fuck named Grover. That's his friends. So within the last year, nothing has happened that involved monsters or anything of that sort. All that's really happened is Percy went through grade 7. And at the last week-ish of school, they decided to have a dodgeball game. And it turns out he's playing dodgeball with fucking monsters. Percy survives this dodgeball game with the help of his homeless friend Tyson and his bearded fuck friend Grover. Tyson is revealed to be a Cyclops. Now, if you don't know what a Cyclops is in mythology, it's basically one of the sons of Poseidon, which, by the way, is Percy's dad. And they're kind of like weird, to say the least. They have like one eye and shit. And if you ever seen Cyclops from X-Men, that was inspired by this. This Tyson doesn't shoot lasers out of his eyes though. So in true fashion, on the last day, some shit happens. This will be a common trend throughout all the Percy Jackson books. And Percy ends up going to Camp Half-Blood again. His mother is now alive and everything's okay, but the problem from before still hasn't been addressed. The problem from before isn't addressed, where he was betrayed by Luke, some guy that he really looked up to. Same thing with Annabeth, Percy's friend. She's also distraught by the fact that they were betrayed by their friend. So they get to Camp Half-Blood, everyone meets each other again, and it turns out Tyson, this homeless guy, who's a Cyclops, is now also Percy's roommate. The way Camp Half-Blood works is if you're the son of a specific god, you will be in that house. Just you. The way Camp Half-Blood works is that if you're in this camp and you're the son of a god, you will be assigned to a dorm. If you're the only person who belongs to that god, you will be the only person in that dorm. So finally, Percy has a roommate. And in true Percy Jackson format, he gets assigned a quest because the borders of this camp are basically dying. And Shirian, or I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, the fucking OG of this place, the OG of Camp Half-Blood. Keep forgetting how to pronounce his fucking name. So this Chiron, or whatever the fuck he is, tells Percy that he needs to go find something called the Golden Fleece. So this Golden Fleece in mythology was basically something used by Jason and the Argonauts. It was some quest that he was assigned to, which resulted in this Golden Fleece being what protected a specific kingdom, if I remember right. So for this specific quest, just like I mentioned before, you're assigned in groups of 3, because if you go with more than one, you're fucked. So Percy gets assigned to this quest, Annabeth and Tyson, the homeless dude, Cyclops looking guy. And they set off to find the Golden Fleece. And if they don't find the Golden Fleece, Camp Half-Blood's fucked, because the borders will be destroyed and monsters will be able to come through. So for the characters in this specific book, we get a new addition to his group, Tyson, who basically kind of fills the shoes of Grover in this quest. At first, this guy is not really liked by Percy. It just seemed as like annoying, but as the story goes on, you see their relationships start to develop. But this Tyson guy is just another comic relief character, practically. He plays a few important roles here and there, but he's still just another Grover right now. Grover doesn't stay like Grover. He changes in the future, but for now, he's just another comic relief character. I don't have a problem with that, because without Grover for most of this book, it was kind of, it kind of felt like you wanted something like that to be there, someone like that. And Tyson filled the shoes of that. Percy in this book starts to mature more. You start to see that throughout this entire book specifically, but primarily from the end of the last book till now. You can tell he's a bit more serious. He takes things more, he knows what's important now. He's starting to figure out that not everything's a joke, and he's taking things more seriously. That's basically the main change that happened from Percy in the first book to this. But the main change in the characters in this book comes from Annabeth, which again is the best character in this book. I'll expand on it more in the best scene section, but Annabeth's character in this really, grows because she starts to understand what her problems are as a person. Being that she's a daughter of Athena, she's born with an aptitude for intelligence, things that are thought-provoking. She's very objective, and in her change in this book, she becomes objective with herself. There's a scene later on that really expands on that, but she develops a lot in this book, as well as Percy. They both are maturing at the same pace, but Annabeth's maturity is more distinct in this book from a specific scene. There's no specific change to Percy in this book through a pivotal scene like there is for Annabeth, and I'll get to that when I get to the best scene. Grover has a lot less screen time in this because Tyson filled the shoes of this quest instead of Grover. Grover's hilariousness in this book was just too good. There's so many funny ass scenes that happen with him throughout this whole thing, from getting married to some big ass monster to just a bunch of weird shit. Like, his presence is missed throughout a big section of this book, and I like that he doesn't really have that much of a presence in this book because it makes you miss characters. And you'll see that in the next book especially, that without a specific character in this group, you start to miss them more. You start to see, like, you start to realize why they're so important as a collective through the absence of a specific character. So as we're starting to see these characters really grow, I really enjoyed that aspect of this book. I think if there's anything to say from this book, it's that we're seeing these characters grow up right in front of us. I just feel like, again, there was always a miss within the main cast. I didn't think Tyson was that interesting of a character, the same way I didn't really think Grover was that interesting of a character in the previous book. But the highs of Annabeth and Percy make up for that loss in this specific book. This is where I really started to have a problem, or noticed the problem with the Percy Jackson books. Just like I mentioned before, in this section, the middle section is its weakest parts. A lot happens in the middle that practically could be filled with anything else. I just felt like things happening for an important reason makes a book good. Not everything needs to be very pivotal for the story, but if it's not pivotal, it should be good enough to keep the reader remembering what happened. If you ask anyone what happened in the middle section of the Sea of Monsters who's read the book, a lot of them will forget. I even tested it out by asking some people, do you remember what happened in the middle section of the Sea of Monsters? No one seemed to remember distinct details. And that's a testament to how lackluster the middle section was. I just feel like there should be more importance to the things that happen in the story, the events that take place. But that really changes in the next book. The next book onward, the things that happen in the middle section are really important. Now the best scene, as I mentioned before with Annabeth, the best scene has to do with her growth. Similar to the Mirror of Erised in Harry Potter, the first book, there's a section in this book where Annabeth decides to hear the sirens. Now these sirens are, in mythology, basically, I want to say they're kind of like angels, but they're kind of fucked. They sing, and when they sing, you can almost go insane. This concept comes from mythology that people on the seas would suddenly lose their minds or go crazy from isolation or loneliness, but they attributed it to the sirens, these angel-like things that sing to you and make you basically go insane. So Annabeth says that she wants to hear the sirens sing because when you hear them, you can hear your worst flaws. You get to understand what's the worst thing about yourself. So Annabeth tells Percy, close your ears, I want to hear the sirens and I want to know what my biggest flaw is. This, again, is attributed to her attribute as Athena's child, where she's always curious, always interested, always wanting to know more. And Annabeth decides to trust Percy to wake her up if she goes too far. Very beautiful scene, by the way. Just that interaction that she trusts him enough to be like, wake me up. It's a small thing, but I feel like that goes a long way. So Annabeth hears these sirens and she realizes what her biggest flaw is. She realizes that she's too arrogant. As it would be for people that, you know, are smartasses, and being that she's Athena's child, she's a smartass. She knows all this shit. She feels like she's got all the answers, but she's too arrogant. And this reminded me of the scene in Harry Potter where the Mirror of Erised appears, right? And Harry gets to see what he wants most. It's a very characterizing moment for a character that we really like. You know, we see a lot more into her than we normally would have seen. We see that she's self-aware of her own flaws. And this self-awareness makes this specific section really, really interesting. It's a moment where we are very in Annabeth's heart. We understand what Annabeth is like. And we could have told that her biggest flaw was her arrogance, but not many people are self-aware that you can understand this is my own flaw. So she hears her own flaws and she accepts it. The conclusion for The Sea of Monsters was really, really good. It was very, very catchy, as just like the previous book, it ends on a twist. But this twist is something that's very exciting. You are told about this character throughout the whole story. You're told this Thalia chick is the daughter of Zeus, and that she's Annabeth's old friend that died on her way to Camp Half-Blood when she ran away all those years ago with Luke. So the book ends with her being turned back to human. Apparently she was the one that protected this whole camp from the monsters on the outside world. And since Percy found the Golden Fleece, this thing that's going to protect the whole camp, she doesn't really have a need to be protecting it anymore, so she turns back into a human. It was a really, really good twist, because now all of a sudden we have the son of Poseidon, Percy, and now we have the daughter of Zeus, Thalia. And we get introduced to a character at the end of the story, which we know is going to be important in the future books. But it was such a good twist because Zeus is this, all-powerful being. He's the head of the gods and all this other shit. And he's not supposed to be having kids, but all of a sudden Thalia exists the same way Percy exists. So she's an illegal child as well, just like Percy. And it ended on that twist where she comes back, and it's very, very intriguing. And it gets you excited to want to know what happened next. Sea of Monsters was probably my least favorite book that I read up to this point in the series. It just wasn't good enough. It's a testament in it where no one seems to remember what happened in the middle section. All they seem to remember is the end, and sometimes they'll forget even the beginning. It's a very forgettable book in this series, which only serves a purpose of Thalia coming back. So in the context of the whole series, this book could almost be done without, if that one detail, Thalia coming back, could have been integrated into another one of these books. Just like the middle section wasn't important, this book wasn't really important in the grand scheme of this series. The first book, obviously extremely important. Third, fourth, fifth, all extremely important. Second one, it just fell flat. It just seemed like this book was filler, and I didn't really like it. It doesn't mean I hated it, it just that it wasn't my personal preference. I feel like this is the most forgettable book that Rick Riordan wrote. And if you like the book, I'm sorry if I'm just shitting on a book that you like, but I just didn't really fuck with it. So next week I'm going to be reviewing The Prisoner of Azkaban, and in the following week after that I'll be comparing The Sea of Monsters to The Chamber of Secrets and The Prisoner of Azkaban. If you like what you saw, if there's any questions about the releases of these videos, just go in the description. If you were confused by the schedule of the releases, just go to the description. The schedule will be right there.